Hey everyone, it is Emily here, and today I want to talk about faith and the fangirl. So maybe a little less than a year ago, Tashapolis made this video talking about her faith and being a fangirl and all the things that go with it. And it was a really great video. It was really interesting. I thought she had a lot of great insights. And then a couple weeks ago, Jenna made another video to respond to it, and it kind of just got me thinking all about these issues of talking about pop culture and your faith, and how do they go together, and how do we balance our faith and the other things that we're into, and what is idolization and all of this stuff. And it just made me thinking about a lot of stuff, and so I thought I would do my own response video to it as well. So before we go into this, I do want to preface by saying, one, I really hope this video doesn't get too long because I have lots of thoughts. Two, I also have a lot of privileges when it comes to this subject. Now, I am by no means an expert. There are tons of people who are way better theologians than me. There are people who are way better Christians than me. And people who really know what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. And I know a lot of them, and they're fantastic. And so I don't want you to think that I'm an expert, but I also do want to let you know that, I did work as a youth minister for 5.5 years after college. I have a minor in theology. I was taught by some phenomenal theologians. And also, the church work people and the people in ministry I have encountered, how usually, at least the ones that I'm very close to, that I have a lot of these discussions with, are very open-minded. I did not grow up in a Christian household where Harry Potter was outlawed. In fact, one of the reasons that I kind of perked my interest in Harry Potter was the fact that my pastor's daughter was reading Harry Potter. And the pastors that are at the church where I currently attend are very open-minded, and they're very accepting of people, and a lot of people haven't had that experience. And now my family, they might not totally understand my love of vampires and urban fantasy. They also aren't like, oh my gosh, you're such a heathen. And so these are a lot of privileges that I've had as a Christian and my Christian background that I know a lot of people haven't. And so I do kind of want to preface with that, as I do recognize that not everyone has had the experiences with the Christian faith that I have. Also, I do want to say that, if you are not a Christian, or these are not your thoughts and your opinions, that's totally okay. I am not here to sit here and tell you, you have to agree with me, and that you have to do what I do and believe. And even if you have, another faith, and maybe these are some opinions and thoughts that you have, maybe that regards to your faith, I would love to hear how you relate to it according to that. And if you don't have faith, and maybe if you aren't religious at all, that's totally cool. And if this video is not your thing, I'm completely not offended by that. So just all those things being said. So one of the first things that really kind of came to my mind as I was watching these videos is talking about how, learning to balance time with God and putting God first, and the other things we enjoy, and how a lot of times people feel like they have this struggle of oh, I should be reading my Bible or something like that, but instead I am reading a book or watching a TV show or something like that. So I feel like a lot of times we kind of keep our life like a pie, and we have all of these little pie pieces in our life. We have our faith, and then we have our family, and then we have our friends, and we have our pop culture / booktube life, and we have our internet. We have all these fun parts of our life, and we kind of keep them separate. And faith, and we act as though, well, maybe faith needs to be the bigger piece of the pie. Maybe faith needs to be this important piece of the pie, and the other pieces are just little ones. And I had a professor in college, and he actually is like, why are we making faith and God just one piece of the pie? He should be the whole pie. And so God is there when you're reading a book. God is there when you're hanging out with your friends. God is there when you're with your family. God is there in your internet life. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't take time out of our lives to read the Bible. We shouldn't take time out of our lives specifically for God. We totally should. But I think so many times, we judge our faith according to, well, man, I spent so much more time reading a Sarah J. Maas book than I did reading my Bible today. I'm such a bad Christian. No, you are totally not a bad Christian because you skipped your Bible reading for the day, or because you spend more time reading other books that have nothing to do with faith than you did with your Bible. Where does it say that we need to read the Bible every single day and have so many hours? Wait, it's not in there. It says, the Bible says, according to time, it says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. That's it. It says nowhere in there that we have to have a daily devotion or we have to spend X amount of time in our lives devoted to God, because our entire life should be devoted to God. So even when we're reading a book that technically is not faith-driven, it could still be part of your faith life. It's still there. God is still there. He hasn't disappeared because you're reading the Hunger Games. Like, God's totally still there when you're reading the Hunger Games. And, like, I totally admire people who read their Bible every day and take that time. Like, those are awesome habits, and I completely admire people like that. But I also feel like we shouldn't judge our faith because we're not doing the same thing. Which then kind of brings me to my next point of that everybody's faith is going to look different. I know of some people who they stopped reading a certain book series or a TV show or a movie, or they've cut out certain parts of things in pop culture because they felt like it was affecting their faith. That's totally awesome, and that's totally great for them. But guess what? Not everyone's faith is going to look the same way. I think so many times as a Christian culture, we have this like image of what a good Christian looks like and what good faith looks like, when in fact there isn't one perfect image. The only perfect image of faith we have is Jesus, and guess what? We're never going to look like that. We're not. And so for each individual person, it's going to look a little bit different, and that's totally okay. So, like, people who have decided that, like, you know what, this series or this book or this TV show or whatever is affecting my faith life, so I really need to put that down. Awesome. Props to you. But some people, they're not going to have that issue. Like, I know Tasha Hopper, she was talking about how she was having some struggles when she was reading the Shadowhunter book by Cassandra Clare, because she felt like there was some sacrilegious stuff and things like that. And that's awesome that she, like, asked those questions and that she really thought about it and she really wanted to come to terms with it in her mind about what she was reading. That's awesome. I personally did not struggle with that when I was reading those books. Like, I knew it was fiction, it was something that, it was just a fiction story, and so it didn't totally bother me, and it didn't really affect me that much, and that's okay too. Like, with two different people, we have two different outlooks on faith, and our faith is going to look different. Does that mean that she has a stronger faith than me? No. Does it mean that I have a stronger faith than her? No. It just means that it looks different. But I also want to say that if there is something that you're reading and it genuinely makes you uncomfortable, that's totally okay. Like, you are allowed to feel uncomfortable about something. And I would say, but also don't be afraid to read something just because it makes you uncomfortable. I would say figure out why it's making you uncomfortable. Is it making you uncomfortable because it's challenging what you thought, it's making you think in a different way or see a different outlook? Then, you know, it's okay. Like, maybe push through. It's okay to expand your mind. But if it's really making you uncomfortable and being like, you know, I really feel like God would not want me to do this, I don't think he would really want me to be influenced by this, then that's okay, and you can put that away. But also, I think as Christians, so many times, we become afraid of doubt. We get afraid of questions where it's like, oh my gosh, that question, God, we can't do that. Or like, oh my gosh, that challenged my faith. I can't do that. I can't read that. Guys, like, don't be afraid of that. Like, the Bible even says, question everything. So many people in the Bible had doubts. They were not perfect. People in the Bible were not perfect. They had doubts. They had questions. Like, if you read through the book of Psalms, the entire, like, so many of them are, like, cursing God and saying, I don't get what you're doing, you're stupid. Like, the book of Job is basically Job being like, hey, I hate what you're doing, and I don't know where my faith is. And so, like, if we're reading books that challenge our faith and that question different things, like, that's okay. It's okay to challenge your mind, because and I think a lot of times when we're questioning things and we read things that challenge our faith, that's actually when your faith is going to grow, because we're really digging into it and thinking about it a lot. So if you're reading something or you're watching something or listening to something that is questioning, I wouldn't completely throw it away. Don't completely shut that part out, because maybe that's really going to help you grow. We also, as Christians, I feel like we have this habit of creating non-moral issues into moral issues, where it's like, well, I really don't know if God would want me to do that, or to say that, or to watch that, or to read that. And like a lot of times, like it's not really a moral issue, but we're making it a moral issue. Like, I think of, let me think of a good example. Let's take the book Vicious, for example, by V.E. Schwab. This book is full of non-moral people. They are awful, awful human beings. If you read this book and you're like, oh, they're good people, you're not reading it right. But they're awesome characters, and you're totally into it, and you kind of root for them, even though you know you shouldn't. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's like so entertaining and so great, and such really great complex characters. Even though they're really, really awful people. They're awful people. And the thing is, like, it's good because, like, it makes you think more about the human mind and about people and characters, and I think it's awesome in that way. But now, if you're reading this book and you start thinking, hey, maybe I should take revenge on my ex-best friend and go murder someone, maybe that's when it becomes a moral issue. So if you have a book that maybe is causing you to think of things and want to do things that would harm others or harm yourself or something, that's when it's a moral issue. It's not a moral issue just to read it. Like, it's totally okay to read it. And so we just have this habit of making non-moral issues into moral issues, and it's just kind of like, it's okay. It's okay, guys. I'm sorry, I'm realizing this is becoming like way more snarky and harsh than I intended it to be, and I'm so sorry. Like, that's not that's not what I wanted to go for, but I do kind of want to point out some of these things. And also, I feel like when we get so caught up in, I can do this and I can't do that, and maybe I should think this and maybe I shouldn't think that, and all that, I feel like we're missing the point. Like, the point of this faith is forgiveness and love and kindness and peace. Like, we get so into this, like, what's right and wrong and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and like that's not the point. Like, when you read the Bible and you read the epistles and like talking about grace, like, it's talking about being free from that guilt. And I think we kind of twist it and we make Christianity into this like guilt trip. And that's totally not the point. The point is actually the opposite, is to get rid of that guilt. And I think when we're focusing so much on what I'm doing, how am I helping my faith? How am I growing closer to God? How am I cutting out things that affect my faith? We're focusing on ourselves, and we're not focusing on what Christ did for us and the freedom that we have in Him. And so I'm not saying that we shouldn't be thinking about moral things. We totally should be thinking about what is going to help us grow and all of that. But I think so many times we get into this mindset and it's focusing on us and not on Christ and everything that He did. And when we're trying so hard to do everything right, we're completely erasing the whole point and the fact that He got rid of all of that for us. Also, I want to say that, like, God can talk through anyone and anything. Like, when I worked in youth ministry, one of my favorite things was to take popular movies and books and different things in culture and relate them back to God. Because I think God can speak through anything. Like, even if that wasn't the author's intent, even if that wasn't the movie maker or the actor or the singer's intent, like, God can still speak through that. Like, any good thing comes from Him. So if something is good, it comes from Him. And I've always had this philosophy of that art and creating things in and of itself is a holy act. Because when you look at the creation story, it's basically God being artistic. He is creating things, He is making things, He's forming them, and being creative, and He made colors. Like, it's so cool when you really think about the artist that God is. And then, at the very end, He created man, and men and women in His image. And I think that's one of the aspects of being created in God's image, is that we're created to create. Like, we have the capability to make art, and books are art, movie and TV shows and paintings and all of these things are art forms, and I think those are things that come from God. So the fact that we have all of these things is because God made us that way. He made us creative. And so even if there are things that are kind of sacrilegious or things that maybe aren't done in a Christian light, like, these are all, in a way, sacred, holy things because that's how he made us. That's one of the ways we're made in his image. And so, and it's kind of sad how things that are labeled Christian actually, I think, are not very good quality. And it's really, really sad because art is supposed to push you. It's supposed to make you think and make you feel something and challenge you. And so many times I feel like Christian fiction or Christian music and Christian movies don't really do that. They just kind of like have an agenda and are just like, Jesus, 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 and not actually good stories. And it's so sad because I personally think creating an art and all of that are really sacred and holy, and we throw away a lot of the really good ones because we think that's not morally acceptable, or it's not Christian enough, or it doesn't have the name Jesus in it. And that, like, kind of breaks my heart. I mean, I think about, like, one of the books I've been talking about a lot this year is I read this book, Priest, by Sierra Simone. And guess what? It's erotica. But that book connected me a lot when it came to faith and balancing faith and life and sexuality, and it was really good. And, like, most good Christian girls would never touch that book, which is fine. If you don't want to read that book, that's fine. Like, I get it. But, like, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a lot of value and can bring you closer to God, even if it's not your traditional good Christian girl thing. So, even if something isn't traditionally a Christian story, like, it can totally bring you closer to God. Like, God can totally use that. If we think that he can't use certain things to bring people closer to God, then we're putting him in a really small box. And even when you look at the Bible, like, look at all the characters in the Bible. Like, there's, like, prostitutes. And there's, like, people who, like, steal and murder and lie. And God used all of them. So if he can use them, why can't he use our favorite books? And then there's the issue of idolization. And I can totally see how this could become an issue. Of, like, we tend to idolize a character or an author or a celebrity or something like that. And that's something we totally have to be in check of. And I know I'm a huge fangirl. Like you know, guys know me. Like, I flip out over characters and authors, and I go crazy. And I know I totally have to put myself in check. And I think just, like, in general, we do that with a lot of things. We do that in relationships, too. Like, how many times have people idolized their boyfriend or their girlfriend or their spouse? Like, we do it to everything. And so I definitely think that is something that we do need to keep in check sometimes, and just realizing that, like, oh, hey, this is just a fictional character. Oh, hey, that's just a person. I shouldn't be putting them above anything else. And I also wouldn't want to treat God the same way I do when I fangirl over things. Like, I've heard some people, like, they were criticizing ones of, like, man, like, when one of the last Harry Potter movies was coming out, people were like, man, I really wish people would get this excited about God. And I'm kind of like, I mean, you guys know, I love Harry Potter. Like, Harry Potter is the best. He's my fave. Forever my favorite, and fantastic. So, like, I love Harry Potter. But I also, like, I would not want to bring God down to the level of the books and the fictional characters that I'm reading. Like, why would I treat him the same way that I do fictional characters? Like, he's God. like, he's, like, I want to treat him with reverence and respect and love and all of those things. And so, yeah, I'm not going to talk about God on my Facebook page and my Twitter and all of that the same way I'm going to talk about Harry Potter, because I actually would kind of find that really disrespectful. So, those are, I'm sure I have a lot more thoughts, but I'm sure this video is already far too long, and I'm sorry. But I had a lot of thoughts, and I would really love to hear your thoughts. Please check out Jenna and Tasha's videos, because they are also fantastic. And I think this is a really good conversation for people to be having and to be thinking about. And so I really want to hear all your thoughts, and I will see you all in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye.